Everyone, welcome to the Smith.ai Masters Series. Today, I'm Maddy Martin. I am the VP of Marketing at Smith.ai. We are a 24/7 virtual receptionist service for businesses, small, medium, large, mostly solo and small. That's really our niche. And we're here to bring you great advice to help boost your business, to improve productivity, professionalism, and profits. And today, I've got a fantastic guest, Cody Muenster of Cultivate Advisors, and we're going to be talking about how to get more ideal customers by word of mouth. Cody will cover how to build a customized referral plan to increase sales through word of mouth marketing, how to overcome the biggest obstacles that are preventing you from consistently winning more ideal customers or clients, and how to take immediate action right after you watch this to increase sales. So this is applicable whether you have a bit of a word of mouth program, a marketing strategy, or if you're just getting started, if it's been a little hodgepodge and you really want to formalize it, or you're looking at new angles and ways of improving that word of mouth marketing to get more referrals, get your name out there, formalize sort of that brand and pitch and voice that you have in your community. And without further ado, I would love, Cody, for you to introduce yourself, and then we can get right into it.
Thank you so much, Maddy. Hello, everybody. I am super excited to be here. My name is Cody Muenster, and I get the pleasure to hang out with you for the next hour. Thank you. I appreciate you for wherever you are. Buckle up, because I hope you're really ready to get some value out of this today, because my intent is to really deliver that. And our purpose here today is to make sure that, hey, you showed up for a rhyme and reason, and let's figure out what that is for you personally, so you can go ahead and you can get that takeaway. So what I'm going to do is just share the screen. How many times have you heard that one before? I'm going to share my screen, but I am going to share my screen. And give me a thumbs up, or like, Cody, I got this in the chat. You can see Maddy's already shaking her head. Yes.
That's good.
Excellent. So we're going to be talking about who here is excited to learn how to triple the number of ideal customers you get by word of mouth. Can I get a yes in the chat? At least one, two. I get one hand raised, a couple. Yeah, buckle up, because this is going to be a fast-paced session. We're going to go through a lot. And just understand, when we go through this topic, this is a workshop that I lead for days at a time. So one thing to remember as you're going through this is to make sure that you just find something that really resonates with you. And just know that you can engage with me, I'll give you some information and some resources at the end, but just make sure that you find something that you can really just take and go to work right away. So a little bit more about me. I'm a business advisor and partner at Cultivate Advisors. Before I talk a little bit more about Cultivate, my experience really started. I started my first business when I was 20 years old. It was a franchise business, but maybe some of you have heard of it. It's been a nationwide franchise for over 30 years, and it was called College Pro Painters. So College Pro Painters is where I got my first start at just owning my own company. And when I did that, the first year, I had a dozen people that worked for me, and we painted residential homes around my area. I'm from Green Bay, Wisconsin. Any Packer fans in the chat? I don't know if that was a triggering moment for anybody, but yes, I am from Green Bay. And, when I started my business at that age, there's just a lot of lessons and things that I've taken with me over the last 15 plus years since those days. But, there was 200 franchisees when I first started my company in 2000. Oh goodness, this is dating me. This is 2006. And going back, and when I look at all the stuff that I've learned over that life of just what I've accomplished, some things that really stand out in learning that, as the first year, I was in the top 10% of producers out of 200 franchisees. So what did that mean? It really means just amount of business produced and customer satisfaction rate. They had to go hand in hand. And I tell you that because obviously I wasn't a college pro painter for the rest of my life. I actually went on after doing that for 2 years, I went on and built and scaled 3 other companies that I exited. And now for the last decade, I've been managing and advising small business owners to help them accomplish their most audacious goals. So a lot of what I'm going to share with you today is based on the principles that I've learned over the last 15 years and what I really learned over the first time running my business. Because who here has ever thought that holy cow, this is kind of hard at times. When you first started your business to where you are now, maybe some of you have teams that you've grown and scaled multiple businesses, or you're thinking about how do I grow and scale? Well, the point of today's session is I'm going to be sharing with you principles that have been taken away from all of these businesses over the years. And when it comes to word of mouth, to have that as a keystone strategy in growing and scaling your business is an absolute keystone. So some of the things that I just want to share with you, and just like where my focuses are, and just like some of my specialties, so you can get a better chance to just know me. Like, our objective with our clients and the people that I work with is just about getting super clear on your goals and what you want to achieve, and helping you achieve those milestones. And when you get really clear, it's no surprise. I've had clients that have achieved their goals in 5-year goals in 12 months. I love the fact that people actually have a business that provides them freedom of like whatever you want. When you started your company, what was the freedoms that you wanted? Was it a freedom of money? Was it a freedom of time? What was that? And, I'm just really proud to see people that we work with just to put in the effort, and the business owners that we work with sometimes cut their working hours in half. Imagine if you took all your working hours, maybe you don't want that anyway, but what that would do for your life. So what you're going to see from me is just some of my superpowers is I'm going to bring a lot of enthusiasm to this topic, but also, really helping bring out the best of you and your team as you go and implement these things. And I'm just really excited to be here with you. So our mission as a company is to partner with committed entrepreneurs in propelling their businesses beyond expectations. Okay. And over the last couple of years, Cultivate, if you're familiar with us or not, has grown by over 600%. We have over 50 people on our team. We have over 30 advisors advising small businesses across the country and even across the globe. We have clients in China. And, this really landed us on the Inc. 500 list a couple of years back. And, we're really proud as an organization to really help, and achieve we actually found the interesting stat to be on Inc. 500 or the Inc. 5000 list rather for 2 years in a row. Less than 10% of companies actually achieve that. So it's something that's like many people ask us, like, how did you achieve these goals? And like, are these outcomes? And we have these types of events to share strategies and tools that have effectively worked for us, but also our clients. So what I'm going to be covering with you today is going to be more about just foundational principles that can work for any segment. It doesn't matter what business you're in. Now, there's a lot of attorneys potentially on this conversation today, but I'm going to talk directly to the generalities of everyone today. Well, how many of you can relate to this? 2020 was kind of a crazy year. Let's be real. How many of you felt like this at times? It was a roller coaster, right? And I don't know if were you which image you most relate to, but for the first time, you had to be super innovative, right? Depending on the business that you had to pivot in the matter of sometimes days, if not weeks, in order to survive even. So that had to become a state of mind more than ever, this innovation piece. And even our social interactions, look at us right now, for wherever you're engaging with me. And it's like, this has completely changed the fabric of how we communicate as a society and as business owners. So we have to be able to reach our clients in different ways and be able to share our wisdom. But some of the things that I'm going to be sharing with you, I just want to give you some statistics because I think this is just relevant for our conversation, because these principles have been applied to what I'm going to show you. Last year alone, we worked with over 485 businesses in 47 different industries. And over the top, collectively, these businesses grew by $76 million in revenue. And the one that we're really proud of for our clients is that the average business grew their bottom line profit by 34%. Revenues weren't up a lot when we looked at all the businesses and the trends for last year. But what was up was profit, because we put such a focus on how do we get more efficient? How do we scale back to the things that really make the revenue go in your business? So how we did that and how we're going to be thinking about this is how many of you can, first of all, relate to this picture? It's like, as a business owner, you have to wear all these different hats at times. And some of you, isn't it true? You love putting on some of these hats, but isn't it true that maybe some of them are a little bit dusty? And our role with companies is to help really come in and help you facilitate that and juggle those hats to know which one to put on appropriately and when, to help you lead and scale through your teams. And we have a really just keystone methodology that we use. It's called our business propeller. And in in the center of this propeller is financials. Every business has to have clear financial goals, and we have to start there, which in the upper right, you'll see sales. So then from there, we have to decide how many sales do we need to generate your income goals. And then no surprise, we need to figure out from the marketing side on this engine, because this is a propeller blade, of how many leads do we need from what section or what segments, what markets, who's the target to generate the sales. And then you got to think about the recruiting, right? Like, how do you recruit top talent to get and stay with you? And then how do you lead them? How do you lead them into the performance that you're looking for? And then woven throughout this fabric, you'll see the black interlaced is the productivity aspect. We have to be productive as we do these things. So we're here to make sure that our clients just have a balanced approach. So today's purpose, when you look at that methodology, we're going to focus in on the marketing propeller. And we're going to talk specifically around word of mouth and generating business that way. But I'm going to be sharing with you principles, referral strategies that work both for our company and for our customers. And some of the outcomes that really I'm excited for you to take away from is just to know when and how to effectively ask for referrals. We're going to go old school. Like, this isn't going to be a lot of earth-shattering things today. And I think that's going to be beneficial for you to hear, because sometimes you just got to get isn't it true? You got to get good at the basics. The basics is where the foundational stuff, if you can get good at this skill can take you to a whole different level, especially if you're implementing it with your team. And what we're going to make sure that I said in the beginning, make sure you just pick one idea that you can go implement that you're really committed to really help you to take yourself to the next level. So here's going to be the agenda. We're going to cover the psychology, like what is it about this topic that sometimes seems taboo? Like, why are some people really good at it? Why are other businesses? We're going to get into like all the aspects around psychology, because that is the gateway to making sure that you have more coming through, more ideal customers coming through to your door. And then we're going to talk about what's called the PACER strategy. So some things you're going to want to consider writing down in a moment is this strategy. I'm going to share that with you in a second. And then we're going to talk about at the very end, make sure you stick around on this one, because I'm going to share with you the number one tip that 90% of people neglect, costing them more referrals. And here's the deal, my friends. It's so simple that not only will you get more referrals from your customers, it's also something you can implement today with little to no effort. And if you're business owners, we're asking for you today is to share what was your key takeaway. And if you share your key takeaway with us at the end, we're actually going to give you an opportunity to receive free advising from us that's valued at $500. And anyone on this call has access to that as long as you're a business owner. So I just want to make sure that grab your takeaway, share that with us at the end. We're going to give you access to that if you want it. Great. So here's the question. Let's open up and go ahead and jump it in the chat. What's the value of this topic? For us, I feel like it's three key things. Number one is people pay 2 times more attention to recommendations from friends. I mean, isn't it true? When you go to buy something that you care about, isn't it true? Like, how many times do you like go and ask one of your close friends or colleagues or whatever, hey, what do you think? What would you do? What have you bought? So that's probably no surprise. But what's interesting is the second thing here is what's the value of this topic is referred customers are less likely to leave. There's stronger loyalty there. So think about retention. You can take this even from employees, employees that have been referred to you, tend to stick around longer. So that's not just word of mouth on customers. This also goes into multiple factors. But then the third one, this is the one that I think if any business owner can relate to this, it's referred customers bring you higher profit margins. There's a great study that was done out of a Harvard business study. I got a couple of them that we're gonna talk about in a moment. But customers who found your business through word of mouth spend on average 200% more than the average customer that comes through your door, done by a Harvard Business Review. It's a generality speaking, but if you think about it, it's like, how is that possible? We'll get into more of that. But before we begin on any of this today, and for all this, I want to share with you an honest disclaimer. Because in order for this to work, you must provide an awesome product or service for the following to be most beneficial. If you're not getting the desired amount of referrals already, in your business, there's typically one of two reasons. One, you either have a very niche business and it's hard to refer you, and not every single person needs your service. Or number two, we actually have to look in the mirror and we actually have to ask right now, how great is your customer experience right now? And be honest with yourself. Because if it's not on a 1 to 10 scale, 10 being like, it's awesome, 10 out of 10. If it's anything less than a 9, just an NPS, we call it NPS, is just a rating system that a lot of big businesses use, of just net promoter score. You might have heard that before. Well, what that says is if you do a survey with any of your customers and they ever rate you 8 or below, they're actually not going to promote your company. No surprise. You actually think 8 is pretty good, but it's actually not. It's actually just saying that people are kind of satisfied, but they're probably shopping you around a little bit. So what you first got to do is you got to look into say, hey, what do we got to take our customer experience to the next level? Because honestly, that strategy will help this just as much, but you got to start there. Okay. All right. So the process that we're going to share with you produces results. 95% of customers that I personally work with came from word of mouth. The other 5% comes from speaking opportunities. Really getting in front of the right audience for where my business owners hang out and to be able to talk with you, to add value to you. Because when you're adding value, for sure, it's going to come back to you. So here's I'm going to share with you is right away how I built my business through word of mouth. And some of the things that I realized that I've been doing over the last several years have really been just like something that just seemed kind of like automatic to me. But it was like, until I started saying, hey, are you doing this? Hey, are you doing this? I didn't realize like not a lot of people are actually following these strategies, and they're so simple. So when I think about just business advising, number one, I'm collaborating with complementary industries that deal with my ideal customer. So if you think about your industry, but if you think about my industry, like business owners need attorneys, business owners need CPAs, they need financial advisors. So what I'm doing is I'm meeting with those people consecutively, and I'm just making sure that my clients are getting second opinions from these people, because we want to take care of them. We want to make sure that they have the proper people in their place as they grow and scale their business. Because if they don't, they're just at risk. So no surprise, I realized I was like, wow, I'm getting a lot of business opportunities from these people. And I'm also sending a lot of referrals. So what I've done is I've just started organizing a group once a month where I facilitate actually these people in a group, and we talk about sharing best practices, number one, and number two, we talk about how we can collaborate more with each other. And just from that alone has created so many opportunities, you guys, that if you're doing this loosely, good. If you can take this to a point of just say, who are complementary industries that deal with my ideal customer, and you facilitate conversation around that consistently, it will take your business beyond like where it's currently at. And it's so easy to do. You just got to devote and dedicate yourself. So that's number one. Number two is just setting weekly goals and intentional asks. For example, if you already have your calendar lined up for this next upcoming week or the week after, and you know that you already have people that you're meeting with, is there anyone that you can go to and just say, hey, can I ask for a referral or an introduction from any of those people? You're going to hear me use the words introduction and referral kind of interchangeably. You'll learn more about that. One of the reasons is just referrals kind of have this like taboo language sometimes that I've noticed with people. Let's be honest, you just want a nice introduction to someone that could be interested in your service, correct? And that's what we're really looking for, is in your calendar, is there people that you're already meeting with? Can you actually set a goal up of just saying, how many people can I ask? Or like, who should I be intentional about asking to help me make an introduction to? And that's where we want to go. So after you've done that, here's the first question. I want you to write this down. What percentage of your total customer base now, even if it's a guess, has been referred to you? And then the next thing I want you to write down is, what do you want it to be? What do you want it to be? That's going to set a marker and a gap, and that's going to help us create a plan thereafter. So here's my first question. Think about this. What are the biggest obstacles preventing you from getting more customers by word of mouth? I think we have, this is a poll, Maddy, I believe that you have access to, right? she's going to share a poll. If you can just really quickly, I'm just going to wait till about half the group has answered this. Like, what are the biggest obstacles preventing you maybe from getting more ideal customers or asking customers for word of mouth? You're uncomfortable asking, you have no process. I don't ask at all. What I'm currently doing isn't working. Give you another 5 seconds. Answers, the race is on. Okay, good. It looks like the leader is, I have no process and I only sometimes ask. Perfect. This is going to be a great, thank you for that. And the poll, thank you. And the close second is I'm uncomfortable asking. Perfect. We got some stuff for you as well, which it's no surprise. That's no surprise. And here's what we're going to do is we're going to help you get more comfortable on it right now. So what I want you to do is to think about, here's the formula, right? It's called PACER. And if you think about this, this is going to work very much. So what you're going to do is you're going to want to write this down vertically on a piece of paper somewhere as an acronym. We're going to build off this in a second, but I want you to think about this as like a recipe. Each one of these situations and what PACER really means and how to create and how for you to become a PACER in your referral strategy is here's the process. It really starts out with having a plan, right? You got to have a plan, no surprise. And then we have to get good at the asking process. So how do we ask, to those of you who messaged on that? And then we have to make it compelling. And then it's got to be really easy for you to be referred. And we'll talk more about that. And then we're going to talk about how to make sure that you review and repeat the process. And like a recipe, isn't it true? If you get the ingredients out of order, like if you were making a cake and you put in the ingredients in different, right, Maddy, you're smiling and laughing because it's like,
well, I went to culinary school, so some people might know. Perfect analogy. I use food often.
All right. So, I mean, that's a good point. I mean, sometimes you want to have that creative freedom to mix and match your own flavors and seasonings and things like that. But when it comes to baking, you got to have like a pretty followed structure process. So I want you to think about this process. Like if you put these out of order, there's a reason why you're not getting the desired result. So keep that in mind as we go, because when you take this back to your team and your company, we're going to build a plan around this. And you're just going to say, all right, team, all right, company, let's put some framework around PACER. What's it going to look like? And here's how we're going to hit our goals. So here's the first step to becoming a PACER. P stands for plan. You got to know your goals. So do you have a process? Do you know your goals? For example, who, how many, how often, how many customers do you want via word of mouth? So starting that with that keystone question. And then within the plan, there's got to be this next question, which is isn't it true not all customers are created equal? I mean, some of those you just absolutely adore. And then some of those other ones you're like, oh man, I made a mistake working with that person, but that's okay. It's just part of the process. So what you got to do is you got to get clear on who's your ideal customer. So who do you love? What do you love about them? List 3 to 5 traits and just think about, how many of these would I actually need to hit my revenue goal for the year? How many of these ideal customers would need to be referred to you in the course of a year? That becomes the first step of the plan. And then we can go and take this to the next step. All right. Because the next part of this process is we got to get really good at the ask. So now that we have the plan, now we got to figure out how to ask. And this is going to speak to some of you in the poll. So remember what I said in the beginning, we got to address some psychology and fears and concerns. I've run a lot of workshops on this topic. And here's the 2 really big common ones that happen, other than I don't have a process, is people tend to say, I don't know what to say. And then the other one people tend to say is, I feel guilty to ask. Like they actually feel guilty to ask. Man, you're shaking your head. And you know what? This is no longer shocking, but it was the first time I heard it. I said, people are actually scared or sometimes guilty. And it's because, when I first started talking about this, I had an owner who was hung up and felt really guilty about asking. And I said, well, why is that? Tell me, why would you feel guilty? He's like, you know what? I already have a customer that's paying me this much money, doing this work for them. I just feel like it's just it's asking too much. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. Do you believe your service truly helps people? And he's like, yeah, of course. Well, isn't it an obligation for you to want to share that with more people? And don't you think that those people, if they're truly happy with your service, would want to share your name? It's like, interesting. sometimes you have to like really lean into the questions of like, what is it about that psychology? So what I mean by that is, if you are uncomfortable, is for you, what hesitations might be preventing you from asking? And just to really start getting clear with that, because, I'm no Tony Robbins, but I think the things that you got to do is what I mean by that is you got to get real with your story. Because if you have a story about this, it's just a story. So let's go. I mean, come on. It's like, if you take nothing out of this presentation and you just think like, oh, I should probably just ask more, I should just be more intentional about that, you just succeeded in this presentation. But if you want to get more tactical, it's like we got to start with those first. And then you got to think about, for the person you might be asking to give you a referral, right? Or asking for you to make what hesitations do we have to help overcome for those people to willingly refer you? There's an opportunity here. So get this. Harvard Business did another study on this topic, and they found that 85% of people won't take a risk if there's a 1% chance something they suggest to a friend or loved one will damage the reputation and the relationship. So think about that. What we need to make sure that is reassured throughout this entire process, and I'll show you how we're going to do that, is we need to reassure them of the value of why they should refer you in the first place, making sure that they're emotionally connected with that. And number two, that there's no hard sales pitch, because isn't it true? I mean, Maddy, if you knew that if you were going to refer me to one of your close friends, and you knew that I was going to go in there and I was going to hard pitch them something, or I was going to make them feel uncomfortable, is there any chance that you would make that introduction for us?
No, and I probably wouldn't host you for a webinar either.
No, right? This is the whole point. It's like even more. There's the social credibility. Like she's trusting in the relationship that I'm bringing. First. Trust first. Hey, I know it's like, oh, I've heard that before, but again, I know you've heard it, but we got to make sure it's reinforced. So here's what we're going to do, because I want to help you on this part of it, is things you got to do when it comes to the asking strategy. Very simple, but I want you to think about this in different terms of your company. So number one, I already said it, ask all the time, because I just keep asking, do better at this task, but also make sure that you're thinking about when we should be asking, because we want to have triggers that are built in that, if anything, if you think about this strategy, that's like in the beginning of the working relationship, sometimes people have this reality like, hey, I need to wait until I deliver a certain result before I can ask someone for an introduction, or before I might even get a referral. And that's not actually what the data shows. Like, it's not true. Think about it. When someone uses your service, they're actually really excited because they think you're going to help them with the problem or give them a solution. So in the beginning, they're really excited. I know I had a financial advisor that just crushed it on his strategy of just making sure he intentionally, anytime he onboarded a customer, he asked them if there was an introduction that could be made to someone else that they knew that might benefit from the service. And that's no surprise, but that industry does a really good job at that. But does your industry? Do you do a good job at that? The second thing is just when you get a happy customer. I love this one because it's so easy. It gives you a reason to go back to them. If you ever have a happy customer that says, oh, Maddy, you were fantastic. Thank you so much for this. Your service was wonderful. You've saved me so much time, all this stuff. Like, this is so fantastic. Thank you for saying that. Hey, just a quick question. Who else do you think could really benefit from our service? We really tend to work with your type of business a lot. Is there someone else that you know that you could help make an introduction to? Very simple, right? It wasn't complicated, but that's a practice dialogue. And if you just simplify it down and sometimes just script it down, it can be that simple. All right. But then the other one, if you have any process, like if you work on renewals, or if you're in insurance or anything like that, where you're consistently connecting with customers on subscription services, et cetera, add this, go right now into your checklist of things that you cover with customers. It should be two things. One, to validate your relationship and how are they happy with your service? And number two, after you build up the courage just for that, then if they are happy and you want to work with more of those people, ask them, Ask them, because you're going to share with them the ideal persona that you want to work with. And you're just going to start there. And if you just do that consistently, think about if you have a team of people too, and you all did this and you multiplied that by 3, 4, 5 people on your team, maybe some of you have 100, 1,000 customers, whatever that might be. You can imagine the multiplier effect of what would happen. Huge opportunity. And the last one with this is you got to be persistent. I'm going to talk about more of this in a moment. This is you're thinking long-term. My friends, think long-term. This is not a short-term, just quick strategy today. You're like, this is going to be the fabric that's woven into the longevity success of your company. And we want to think long-term. But here's some things that you don't want to do, right? Don't be afraid to ask. Like, one of the things I'll never forget, this was almost 10 years ago now, when I asked someone I was working with, I really enjoyed the relationship. So I was young into my advising career. And I just remember just saying, you know what, I really enjoy working with you. And her name was Kathy. And I said, Kathy, would you mind like helping? Is there someone else that you know that could benefit from the service that you would be open to introducing me to? And I'll never forget her response. And she said, oh, yeah, I didn't know you were actually taking on more business. That I'm happy to. Who are you looking for? Man, you're shaking your head. I was like, I almost fell out of my yeah. I was like, but I had to really look in the mirror at that point, because a couple of things that I think that triggered me on is like, am I showing up just like too busy for this person all the time? Like, I've got a lot of stuff going on. I don't have time to service your type of person. Or two, I was just like, people just don't know. People really don't know that you're taking on more business. This is not the only person I've ever heard this from. So if you're not telling them that you're proactively taking on more business right now, this is actually a key thing that you got to improve upon. So you got to just get permission from people, and just like, don't be afraid to ask, but don't be generic on this. If any of you have been in a BNI group or anything like that, a business networking group, you totally know the power of just, hey, do you know someone that, I love the ones that, people have on their, when they say something like, yeah, we're really open to more referrals, or, do you know someone that you can refer us? It's like, that is so general. You have to be specific. You have to, because there's just too many things. I know too many people. You know too many people. So if someone asks you, it's like, hey, can you help me define that? Like, what does that look like? We got to start there. All right, let's keep it moving. So we are on to the C of making it compelling. Right. So how do we make it compelling? We've planned it out. We've got a little bit better on the ask. We're building up the courage. We're making that more intentional in our process. But why should someone refer you to others? Is it valuable enough? Referrals are just not a personal priority for people. No shocker. Is that desk look like your desk right now? Right? I hope not. But if it does, like, how far do you think we are on people's personal like to-do list? I mean, how big is your to-do list? Be honest. Is it 5 things? Maybe put it in the chat. If it's more than 5 things right now, is it more than 10 things right now? I like be curious. Well, that's a whole nother time and priority management is a whole nother conversation. But reality is people are just busy. So we need to come up with a way to make it really, really compelling to get to the top of their to-do list for people wanting to take proactive action to make introductions for you. And here's how we're going to do it, right? We need to start and create a list. Write down, I want you to make sure that you have an action item that just like write down a list of the most compelling reasons you can come up with that someone would want to introduce you. And here's the first thing you got to know. My friend, you are the prize. What the heck are you talking about? You are the prize. People think the biggest misconception of this whole thing is that sometimes they have to give a financial incentive or some type of a reward. When it comes down to it, let's be honest, most of you on this conversation today, some of the industries, it's not even legal in most cases. It's not even about the incentive, right? I mean, people are you thinking like, would Maddy introduce me to her network if she was just simply getting a financial gain from it? Like, that's not the reason she's doing it. She's doing it because she wants to add value to you. She cares about making a difference in your life. So that's always going to trump. So she's looking at the relationship as like, this is the value. Like, I want to add that. But if there's a financial, so the only thing back to the recipe example, what I mean by this is if you're offering incentives, like financial rewards, it's always after the fact. Meaning, it always comes as a thank you. So if you're going to, give someone, $1,000 or whatever it is for finding you new business, it has to come after the fact, because if you lead with that, people aren't, I would never refer a loved one to someone if I knew I was just getting financial gain from it. And that's the thing that we're going to solve as a company. So the best option that you have is to make a list out of all the things that we can to create compelling reasons of why people would want to refer you, because that's going to take you up on the priority list. If you go in and say, here's who I'm looking to connect with. I had a cabinetry company that I've been working with for a long time. And I'll never forget, she's like, she wanted to refer me to her builder. Her builder is someone who refers her a lot of work. And I said, well, why would you want to refer me to your builder? She says, well, think about it, Cody. She's like, if you help her grow and scale her business, she's going to become more successful. And in turn, she's going to refer me more work. So it makes total sense. So that's what I mean by you are the prize. If you can help that person connect the dots on the value that you provide, and you actually tell them and actually sell yourself with confidence, not out of arrogance, but out of confidence about the value that you bring, it'll allow those introductions to happen more. And then if you just give some type of a reward after the fact as a thank you for making the effort, and you incentivize that, if you incentivize activity versus outcomes, those things can lead into your favor. If you have any questions on that, we can definitely cover that in more detail. But here's some of the final steps in the recipe. Let's say we've done all that stuff. All right, plan, ask, made it compelling. We now have to make it as easy as possible. People already have enough to do. You have to make it easy. So what I'm going to show you is a couple of examples, thinking about, if you're a business to business type person, or if you're business to consumer today, I'm going to give an example for each. And here's an example of how you can make it easy to refer you, because all you're trying to do is take the thinking and the effort out of it for people to make these introductions. If you can give them a simple, super easy vehicle for them to pass your name around, you win. And when you provide an amazing service, of course. So here's how you're going to do that. So the following is, I know there's a lot on this page, but I want you to only look right where the highlighted section is. Okay. I'm going to bring this whole PACER formula together, and I'm going to share with you a recent example. This is a real example of a way that I've had my clients, my customers, introduce me to other business owners in their network. Maddy, you probably saw an email like this at one point. So here's what I mean. In the middle, I'm basically creating an email template. This is all this is an email template that I've crafted that I give to my clients to say, hey, could you introduce me to so-and-so people that you know? And they're like, sure. And they just email this over to them. They change the language a little bit, and I take all the effort out of it for them. And that's it. So the first step here, as you can see, it says, as Cody's client, right, I'm able to gift his time for a free discovery call where you can identify ways to help you achieve your goals faster and with fewer challenges. This is an example of how you're adding value and you're making it compelling to want to do that. So the next one, I'm going to highlight this. This email goes on to say, now the next highlighted point. Remember how we said we got to take out the fear of the sales pitch? It says, what does it say? The highlighted section says, please keep in mind, there is absolutely zero obligation, zero or intention for you to be sold anything and use his services, right? So you've just dropped their guard completely off. It's like, oh, I can just, let's learn more about this person. And now here's how you wrap the other elements. And now we've overcome the psychology. We've made it simple. We're going here. It's like the last part is just this person making an introduction, and he's just giving me some context of the relationship. He said, hey, Cody, meet Steve Smith. Not a real character, but Steve runs a law firm in the area that helps us with estate planning and business service. I think you would find his world very interesting. He gives me a little bit background from the information. He CCs me on this email. And then what just happens is we just engage with each other and we open up a dialogue. And that has literally been, I could literally show you week after week examples of how these come across in my inbox. And how amazing would it be if you had that for your company too? Here's what I'm going to do. At the end, make sure I'm going to give you my contact information. If any of you want this type of a template, if you're business to business and you want to tailor this, please just ask me. I'll for sure just email it to you. There's no strings attached. You don't have to put in some stupid email list or anything like that. I'm just going to give it to you. All right. So if you want this template, happy to give it to you. There's a lot of psychology thought into this, and it's super easy. But I'm going to show you now, if you're business to consumer and you're thinking, oh, that wasn't really applicable, I challenge that thought. But here's an example if you're a business. So I have one of my best friends owns a chiropractic clinic in my area, and it's one of the most progressive growing businesses. And he doesn't spend a lot on marketing. It's so simple. Here's what he does. Twice a year, especially around the holiday season, around Christmas, he creates a coupon. So let's say he's got 1,000 patients or however many. He pretty much puts 2 gift certificates in an envelope, sends them to his customers at the end of around the holiday season. And it says, if you know anyone that would benefit from the gift of health, please send us and share this with them. We'll cover all expenses for x-rays if needed, etc. And every year I talk to him, Maddy, probably no surprise, it's like he's so busy and booked out for weeks. It's just like, this is his marketing. He's just giving an easy vehicle for him to refer his name. So can you create something like this? Is this something that you could create if you're business to consumer? What could you do to leverage the holidays to just get people to share your name? Perfect. So my question is this: how much faster will your company grow if you consistently are getting introductions like these? And I really think about it. If you had this process where you're getting these introductions on email intros, or you have these, because what we need to do to wrap this all up is to really think about, you got to review and repeat. You got to hold accountability. And think marathon, like running our approach, because the first step is you just got to always ask. You talked about that, and you got to like constantly go back to it. Don't be afraid to always ask. And the reason why I tell you this is, one of my customers, this was not that long ago, I've had someone who said that they were going to make an introduction to someone they knew. Okay. Like, oh, perfect. Tell me a little bit of background. Why do you want to introduce me to this person? Like, thank you, getting some context. And they said they were going to make the introduction. And I was like, oh, great. How many of you ever heard that story before? Like, okay. And then what happened afterwards? Crickets. I didn't hear anything. Has any of you ever like put a yes in the chat if you've ever said someone's going to make an introduction for you and you never heard anything and you're like, oh, maybe they don't want to meet me. So here's the thing. I just added it to because I was meeting with her consistently. I just added it as an agenda item, or just just a follow-up item in our next conversation 2 weeks later. And I said, hey, Jenna, I'm just wondering, like, I know that you said you were going to introduce me to so-and-so. Did you get a chance to reach out to them and connect to them? And you know what she said? I am so sorry. I was so busy, Cody. And I forgot, remember the to-do list that we had said? I've got so much going on, but let me tell you, I can make that introduction today. I was like, really? Well, you don't have to do that, but if you want to, that's great. Because she felt bad. She was committed to the process. So, and actually, it worked out in my favor because she was more compelled to want to make the introduction for her feeling a little bit bad. I wasn't trying to guilt her. And then I just asked her, I said, hey, if I don't hear from it, if I don't see the message come across, in maybe a day or two, do you mind if I reach back out to you just to see if as a reminder, would that be fine? And she's like, oh, for sure. Oh, I said that. And I wonder if anyone kind of got a little bit triggered. Typically, some people say, I feel like that might be intrusive. No, I asked for permission. I just said it because I want to help her. She's got a lot of things going on. Your customers have a lot of things going on. Your network has a lot of things going on. So what you got to do is just be persistent and always ask. And then that customer came back to me. I've been working with this person now for several months. It's just been a great, fruitful engagement. So other things is you got to really track and measure, and you got to be patient and persistent, like we just said. If you're tracking and measuring other metrics in your business, which we're going to talk about in a second, you got to track and measure this. One thing that I would track and measure right now is go back and just find out how many referrals are you getting now? And again, how many do you want it to be? And set a goal over the next quarter. If you took this today and you said, I'm going to install Pacer, and then we're going to go in and we're going to figure out like how much can we improve this, set 5, 10, 25% goals around this and create a plan. It's a great way to do it. So let's review. Let's look at, we talked about the review Pacer. We said we need to have a plan. We need to ask. We need to make it compelling. It's got to be easy. and you got to review and repeat. Now, at the beginning of this, I said I would share my number one tip that's costing you from getting more referrals from people, which is easily overlooked but it's also easily corrected. And here's that thing I'll share with you now. 90% of people who get a customer by referral fail to get even more customers from the same person because of this reason. Here it is. You never told them how it went. You never actually shared the positive impact it made on their life. Think about this for a moment. I know, like, legally, some of you are like, whoa, I actually can't tell them that I'm working with so-and-so. That's not what I'm saying. All you have to do is acknowledge that I spoke to so-and-so. I connected to Maddy. Thank you. I know a doctor that crushes it on referrals from his referral partners, because all he does is just he has a system built out where he follows up with every person that sent them the referral and just letting him know the status. Hey, I talked to so-and-so. I've engaged, I've talked to them, and I want to say thank you so much. And they have a card that's like distributed and all this stuff. You don't even have to go to that level. All you got to do is you could send a text message, for God's sakes. Like, I don't know, just keep it simple. But I really had to ask myself, like, how good was I doing at this a while back? And I wasn't doing that well. As soon as I realized the difference between this, think about it. Anytime, if someone were to like really refer you somebody and you were to go back to them and you were to tell them, if you could, at least share the positive impact that this person's life, you've made in this person's life, all you're doing is you're reinforcing that they made a great decision. They made a great decision, right? And then what happens is bing, 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 their mind, their reticular activating system in their head is thinking like, oh, who else should I refer to Maddy? I want to keep referring more people, because every time I do it, it's like she acknowledges it, she's thankful, and the world has changed. So here's what we're going to do. This is how we're going to go get started with Pacer. Write this down, right? You're going to go right now and you're going to make a list. If you want to go and if you're like detailed to like step A to Z, or like step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, here it is. You're going to make a list of your happiest customers. All right, make 5 of them. You're going to go to them and you're just going to give them appreciation. You're going to let them know that you value them and you're really grateful and you're looking for more people like them. And you're going to ask them if they know someone like the ideal, either birds of a feather flock together, the same person, or you're going to give them some examples of other businesses that they might know. You can look down their LinkedIn account. That's a great strategy to do that if you're looking for introductions. And get into that later. And you're going to give them a compelling reason and ensure they know that you are taking on more customers. Right? You have to let them know that you are taking on more customers, and then make this a reoccurring priority and set goals with your team. Because I want to tell you a story about a customer of how this actually made a difference in their life. I want you to meet Matt. Matt is an actual client of mine in Cultivate, and I've been working with him for 4 years. When we first started working together, he was struggling with a very overwhelmed schedule, not enough free days to enjoy his personal passions outside of his business. And over the next 4 years, really what we established, and by implementing this strategy, Matt adopted this framework and he got a ton of work from referrals. He sets goals around this. He doesn't do any marketing. He's got his top, highest net worth clients that he really just nurtures and we continue to cultivate. And this is an example of referral systems that work well as clients. But what Matt did is more than just referrals. Like, you see some of his biggest wins. He grew his business over 4 years by 20% year over year. He's the #1 key contributor in the firm. He's also created a schedule that's brought him a sense of calm, and he's pre-scheduled golf and hunting days. So I'm going to give you a couple of quick pointers to wrap this whole thing up to help you create and fine-tune your long-term goals. And here's how it works. 1, anytime we're working with a business, you got to think this practical. What's the long-term vision? Do you have a 10-year vision? You just got to pick a number. And ultimately what you do when you pick that number is you're trying to create, like, what's the vision that you're working? What's the succession plan? What do you want for your life and for your business? And we start there. But the next thing is, after that, you pick that framework, is you got to have within your company, if you already don't have them with your teams, is you got to get really good on the macro side. For this year, what's the revenue and profit look like? And then what's another key goal that we can really surround and like rally our company and our troops towards? And then you got to have these measurables, right? Like you got to know key performance indicators. What do we need to measure to hit our macro goals? And usually we have those based around sales targets, recruiting, et cetera. And there's typically at least 3 or 2 to 3 that we've identified and you need to identify. And then the last one is you really start thinking about what initiatives do we need to have on our roadmap? What is going to help move this business forward in the next 3 to 6 months and really be putting a focused effort on this? Because to be honest with you, you can't measure or you can't manage what you can't measure. Thank you, Peter Drucker. No one. When people are really in your company, when you have your employees focused around this, this is where this can really take off to the next scale. And this is why Matt's an example, not just because it's more than a referral strategy. You need the whole picture. That's just one element. So, my friend, I want to ask you, just like, think about this. What was at least one of your biggest takeaways from today? In a moment, I'm going to share with you a link to provide you insight and give you an opportunity for some free advising. I covered a lot, but what is your biggest takeaway? So what we're going to do is go ahead and click this in the link. There's going to be a link to this survey. So I want you to click the link in the chat box, fill out this brief survey on your top takeaway, and you're going to receive free business advising if you want it. All right. So here's what it's going to look like. When you go in there, you just put in your company information. How many employees do you have? What was your biggest takeaway? And for Maddy and my sake, how valuable was this workshop? And in my partnership with Smith.ai today, we're really just going to offer this as just something of incredible value. If you're interested in receiving advising or even just experiencing it, if you haven't worked with a consultant or a business advisor, a coach, whatever you want to call it, it's an opportunity for you to get bigger picture on how to scale your business. So if you go ahead and click this, you're going to see access to receive that free gift. Again, it's a gift that we're giving to you as members of this audience today. And I'm excited for you to really just learn about, like, what are the things that you can either go and implement today, what is sticking with you at a minimum, and then for you to really take advantage of the thing that's in front of you if you want it, and to experience, like I said, it's a $500 value. If you want to experience what it's truly like to work with an advisor to help you put a plan together for a 5-year vision of your business, we do that. And that's the way we give back to small business owners. That is our mission. That is what we're here to do. And we love helping the small business owner community. So Maddy, thank you. I'll let these continue to like pour in, but I'll go to anyone that has questions. They can email me to engage with me. But I am, like, again, if you want that email template, I'll let you take it from here if there's anything that came up.
Yeah. Wow. Cody, I mean, you just absolutely blew me and everyone here away. Way to break it down in just such a digestible format and a process. I absolutely love that. It's something I'm going to take back to Smith.ai too. There's so many helpful nuggets there. I have taught on this subject and I learned something, and I'm always seeking for ways to learn. So if you came here with that mindset today, I hope that there are some really actionable takeaways and strategic takeaways for you as well as you think about how this can impact your business. There were some questions, Cody, on measuring and tracking. Are there any tools that you're using to measure and track from the referrals across other marketing channels, how much time and energy to invest in, and who the best sort of referral partners are, how to double down on those? I think there's a lot of questions around that.
Great. I saw, so 2 questions, one on how to track and measure, and then how to think about your referral partners a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I would just start on the tracking and measuring. If you don't already have a measurement system, just a Google sheet or an Excel spreadsheet is the easiest. Just putting something where you're just looking at it and just keeping it forefront in front of the company. I wouldn't necessarily make a suggestion on, like, you need this robust tracking software. A lot of times people can bake it into their CRM system that they're using, but very, very simple to start, just like anything. The second thing is the referral partners. I asked myself this question. I would pose this question to you: is who is another professional that's hanging out with my ideal customer? Who is another professional that's hanging out with my ideal customer that's not a competitor of mine and it's complementary? And how often am I engaging in valuable, meaningful conversation with them? A lot of times people are doing this really loosely. I think if you really just thought about 2 or 3, like what I found was no surprise, my business owners need really great operating agreements, and they need to get that stuff like all in check. So I have an attorney that works with a lot of business owners. And I mean, my whole path is I realized I was referring so much business to this attorney. I said, jeepers, who else could be like part of this conversation? And that's where the CPA came into the picture. That's where the business insurance broker came into the picture. And then it's up to me to really just facilitate a once a month meeting that has high standards, that gets people engaged in meaningful conversation, because you want to learn from those people. I'm not an attorney, but I want to learn from an attorney of the value they bring, so I can have like insights of what to share with my clients. So it just makes me seem like even more of a trusted advisor. And that's what you want to do with those types of referral partners. So I'd say the first thing is just make a list of 2 to 3 folks, build some type of framework, invite them to a conversation to see if they would be interested in something like this, and then create your own flavor. You might meet once a week. You might meet once a month. You might meet once a quarter. I think that's a great way to start.
Fantastic. Well, we're almost up on time. I don't know if there were any other questions, but feel free to put them in the chat if we haven't gotten to them or anything's occurring to you right now. Let's see. Or feel free to share your own best practices, obviously. That's always interesting. One thing that did come up is conversion rates. That may play a role in, how productive those referral sort of strategies are and what channels. You have an email template. Cody, is that something that you ever share, more concisely for social messages or for texting, or do you find that that's not really so productive?
To share, if I'm gathering the question,
the email template that you have for facilitating the referrals.
I absolutely think if you can take it, a lot of times I just have people from a social aspect for sure. I mean, if you can figure out a way that triggers an automated response from like anytime something that's baked into your system, when you think about it, it's like anytime someone leaves a Google review or you see someone's social media just say something good about you, can you just send them a proactive, like canned message there and just ask them, hey, would you mind sharing this on your feed? Like, I mean, instantly 250 people to thousands of people could see that. And I mean, we get that stuff all the time. And I know that, you help clients monitor their social media, Maddy. And so that's something you can help with, but absolutely.
Facebook messages. Yeah, definitely. And that's something that's coming to mind, right? So if you have that template that actually is for them to make the referral, often there's, texting that goes back and forth. I'm dealing with this marketing issue or business growth issue, and maybe that's a good fit for a new client for you, Cody. I can imagine that email sometimes could get lost in a personal inbox, but a text message mid-conversation would be very helpful too. So you have to know your audience.
For sure. I mean, that's a great example of who connected us, Maddy. I mean, it was over social media or maybe even a text, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think there were multiple sort of channels. Joey's always very active, but I think that he made sure to formalize it with an email, and sometimes that's actually important. The channel, what is the sort of nature of that channel? Is it intentionally an email because that's more of a commitment and it's really saying like, this is serious, I need to send you a multi-paragraph email about this, that sends us a certain message. Yeah,
or I can just be like, hey, 2 sentences, I really love working with you. Do you know someone else that you could really make an introduction for me? Would you be willing to do that? I think this is a culmination to wrap up our time. I know that we're at that time, but everything that we talked about today is exactly what you and I went through.
Yes.
A client of mine made the introduction to you exactly using that process. And I hope the people that are still, if anyone's sticking around, is like getting that. It's like, we're living proof that this works. It's not that hard, but please, if you're spending thousands of dollars on marketing right now and you don't have like an actual formalized referral process, you are missing a huge opportunity. I would double down and take half of that investment and figure out how to put this installed, because you're going to get far greater return. And you can come back to me on that and talk about the strategy and how we can do that.
Appreciate that so much, Cody. That's great advice. And the sooner you do it, the more that you get that viral sort of ratio going with the amount of referrals as your client base grows, right? So that number, that absolute number grows as your client base grows based on your referral rate. So everyone,
go ask my friend. That's it.
yep. Everyone, thank you so much. Cody, you are a pro. You're the master. Thank you so much for being here. And everyone, thanks for joining us. I hope that you'll connect with Cody and take advantage of that 2-hour free consulting session that is incredibly generous of him. And, he really puts his money where his mouth is. So please have a wonderful rest of the day and look forward to seeing you again in a session soon.
Thank you all. Till next time.
Everyone.